Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hookah With It. Today I am doing my July midway wrap up. I've never done, wow, early in the morning. I've never done a wrap up in the middle of the month, but I have been finding that by the end of the month, sometimes I will forget little things that I wanted to talk about certain books. And so this way I'll get to gush and get all of my thoughts out there. So let's get into it. So I've read 5 books so far, which is pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with myself so far. That's very good. Although one of the books I finished on July 1st, so technically I did all of the brunt work in June. And that book is Sweet Francaise by Nevermoor. Now, I gave this 3 stars. This is very difficult to talk about because the author lived in France during World War II. Now, this is a work of fiction. However, in real life, she died during World War II, and I do feel a little bit uncomfortable rating this. But I sat down with myself as I was thinking about the book when I finished it, and you know, it is a work of fiction. So for that reason, I gave it 3 stars. I have never read a World War II book where I felt the fear of the characters and also just the setting of France so vividly. This book is about World War II and the occupation, the German occupation of France. And that's something that the author went through, and so you can feel that fear. However, I sadly didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care who lived and who died at all, and I really assumed that I would picking this up. But I felt nothing for all of the characters. I think maybe the reason for that is there were so many of them. There were a lot of characters. Now, I listened to this on audiobook, and I do think that I probably should have picked this up and actually read the physical book itself, and that might have helped me figure out who was who a bit better. So unfortunately, I didn't adore it, but that fear that kind of seeps through the entire book was really quite brilliantly done. So yeah, 3 stars for that. I also read Nevermoor by, I think her name is Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade book about a little girl named Morgan Crow, and her hometown essentially believes that she's a cursed child and that all of the problems in the world are because of her. So if it rains, it's her fault. If someone gets into an accident, it's her fault. And it's predicted that she's going to die on a certain night. And instead, she's swept away to Nevermoor. Now, I thought this was a sweet book. This I gave 4 stars to, and I couldn't give it 5 stars because I did feel like there were so many similarities to Harry Potter. Now, while I loved that because it was exciting and really fun to, you know, have settings again that were so magical, and there are these different tests that our main character has to get through, and it really felt like you were back in Harry Potter, but obviously slightly different. Christmas is another big celebration. Like, there's just so many nods to Harry Potter that it felt like, ooh, it was just a little too much, but I enjoyed it so immensely. It was really fun, so easy to read. I will definitely be picking up the next book in this series. This was the first, and I really enjoyed it. So definitely a 4-star read from me. And then I had a couple of duds. Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. Okay, I should have known going into it. I mean, this is a YA book. It's historical fiction, but YA. I ended up giving this 2 stars. This is about a World War II scenario where there's a girl and her family. They're sent to Siberia to do work because of Stalin and Stalin's reign. And I did like that there was a departure from the World War II stories that we usually hear of Germany and England and France, and you know, so I will give my hats off to her for that, but that's pretty much it. I didn't like this. So I didn't like the way that Ruta Sepetys referred to the characters. Some characters in this book that we're following have names, and some of them are main characters in the book and are only referred to as the bald man or the man who winds his watch. And it was beyond annoying to me. I think I also found it annoying because it's YA. To me, referring to characters that way and knowing it's YA, I kind of felt like, do you think teens are not intelligent enough to remember a name or to recognize a person? You can refer to the person as balding several times if you need to. But their characters were very prominent, like they were distinct characters, and I just really found that extremely annoying. I couldn't get beyond that. And then the storyline itself, it really, there was nothing new brought to this genre, and I really thought there would be, because I mean, we're in a totally different country in a World War II setting, and I thought there would be slightly different things, but I don't know. I also didn't care who lived or died. That sounds so awful, but I just really strongly disliked this book. This, you know, I know some people said to me that, yes, it's historical fiction, and yes, it's YA, but it doesn't feel like YA. It feels like historical fiction, and I have to disagree. Like, this felt like YA to me, which is part of the reason why I hated it so much. I just really don't like YA. I've liked like 3 books that have been YA, so yeah, I do not recommend it. Now, I do have Salt to the Sea here, and I will be giving that a chance. I'm hoping that she refers to people with names and not descriptions, but we'll see. We will see. Okay, next up is another dud. We're gonna end off on a good, like a high note, so it's okay. The next dud was The House Swap by Rebecca Fleet. Oh man, I really wanted to like this. This is a new release, and it's a thriller, and it's about this woman who, she does this house swap. She and her husband are having very bad marital problems. They decide to like get away by doing a house swap. And when she gets to this new house that she's staying in for a couple of weeks, there are flowers out that are kind of like her favorite flowers. Music that reminds her of a certain time in her life, and she feels like something is going on and the person she's swapped with knows her somehow. I think I have a problem with this for several reasons. First of all, this was not a thriller at all. There was a mystery in here, but there was none of that fast-paced kind of vibe to this, to my mind. There really wasn't. There was a lot of sex in here that, it just drives me nuts. It felt a lot like The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney. That's what it is. It felt like that, where there was so much sex that you're like, what, am I reading between shades of gray? What is happening here? I don't need that much. In fact, I don't like romance at all, really. I really struggle with romance, so there was a lot of that in here. It did get better towards the end, but I now know so many people who DNF'd this after picking it up, and I do not recommend this. I'm sorry to say, unless you enjoy domestic thrillers. If you liked The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney, you really might like this. That was a huge book. So I just can't recommend it, because for me, I like my thrillers gritty. I like some blood. I like to think that no one's gonna survive. Like, I really enjoy something with grit, and I really like characters who are fleshed out, and I didn't feel like any of that was here. It did get better towards the end, but I felt like it was too late, and so I gave it 2 stars. Okay, finally, we got better. It got a lot better with The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. Now, Riley Sager wrote Final Girls last year, and it was my favorite thriller of the summer. I tend to pick up a lot of thrillers in the summer, and yeah, that was just such a breath of fresh air for that genre. If you haven't read that one, it's still my favorite of the 2. That one I gave 5 stars. This one I've given 4 stars. It's so funny, I just finished saying that I love a lot of grit in my thrillers, and this doesn't have a lot of grit, but for me, this has major nostalgia. This reminds me so much of the books that I used to read when I was a kid. I used to be really into R.L. Stine, not the Goosebump stuff, but the, was it Fear Street or Fright Street series, and they were always like creepy. Is there a ghost? There was lots of camp settings. Now this is a camp setting about a girl who's she's, as a little kid, she was staying at this summer camp, and the girls that lived with her in her little bunk, I don't know what to call them, cabin, there's 4 of them, and 3 of them went missing, and she was the only one that's lived to tell the tale and came out of this summer camp alive, basically. We don't know what happened to the other girls. And so in this book, we're following her later on in her life. It's like 15 years later. She's an artist. She cannot get these girls out of her mind, and she decides to go back to the camp. And I just thought this was a lot of fun, very nostalgic for me, incredibly nostalgic. The ending, okay, so I will say this. If there wasn't the nostalgia and the very end, I probably would have given this 3 stars. But because of those 2 things, that ending was fantastic. I loved the ending. I really, really enjoyed that. Yeah, I couldn't stop reading this. I couldn't put it down. I read it in the car when Barry and I were on the way to actually a campsite. I don't actually camp. It was Barry's mom's trailer, and we just went to visit and left. And yeah, I don't really camp much, but this seemed fitting to read on the way there, and I finished it on the drive. And I just love Riley Sager. Now, this man is not the best writer in the world, I will say that. Like, the sentences that he crafts and even the characters, this is a little bit lacking, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the storylines and the imagination surrounding the storylines, and how he's always able to create nostalgia in all of his books. Final Girls brings you back to when you were a kid, having a sleepover with your friends, watching Halloween or Scream. Like, and then this brings me back to R.L. Stine days. And for that reason alone, I will always read Riley Sager. Like, we'll always read his stuff, because I know that I'm going to get that in all of his books, and I appreciate it so much. So yeah, that was a 4-star for me. Now, I should say, I went on Goodreads after I finished The Last Time I Lied, and a lot of people said that they liked it more than Final Girls. So if you were someone who was like, about Final Girls, maybe check that out, because a lot of people loved it a lot more. Anyway, so those are the books that I have read so far in July. Let me know in the comments below what you are reading and loving right now, or if you've read anything so far in July that you've really loved. Yeah, let me know in the comments below, and I will talk with you later. Okay, bye!